and only later on did I get involved in business administration in those areas. Cognitive psychology is that field in psychology which deals with how we make decisions and how we solve problems. Are there any of you here who are studying economics? We've got a few students, okay? Good. So, students who are studying economics, have you been taught something about behavioral economics?
Yeah.
What do you know about behavioral economics? Somebody be brave and tell me. Okay, so I see lots of discussion, but nobody's going to be that brave person to put up their hand and answer. Oh, good, we have somebody. Yes, please. So everybody can hear.
People buy what they want and what they need.
Yes, you're correct. You're correct. But behavioral economics is a little bit more complex than that. And to understand what behavioral economics is about, I need to take you back to the year 2002. In 2002, an Israeli professor from my university by the name of Daniel Kahneman, a psychologist, won the Nobel Prize in Economics. Why would a psychologist win a Nobel Prize in Economics? The reason why is that Daniel Kahneman devoted his entire academic career to researching how people, without realizing that they are doing so, make mistakes in their decision-making process. And if I explain that by referring to one of Daniel Kahneman's famous experiments, you will understand me a little bit better. In this experiment, Kahneman invited a group of people, just ordinary people like yourselves, to come to a room just like this room, and in the room, instead of screen, there was a large wheel of fortune. You know, the kind of wheel that you see on television shows that you can spin around, okay? So there was this large wheel, and on the wheel were the numbers 1 to 100. Kahneman then asked anybody in the audience who was willing to volunteer to please come up and just spin the wheel. So someone would volunteer, would come up to the wheel, would spin it, and the wheel would stop on some kind of number. You never knew which number. And now we come to the really important part of this experiment. Because Kahneman then asked the audience, would everybody please write down on a piece of paper, without discussing it with their neighbors, how many African nations they thought were in the United Nations. Now, maybe if you're from Africa, you have some idea of how many African nations are in the United Nations, but most people have no idea how many African nations are in the United Nations. And the astonishing finding of Kahneman's research was, and I have to tell you that this experiment has been repeated hundreds of times in almost every country around the world, and the findings, the outcome, is always the same. What Kahneman found is that even though there is no connection between the wheel of fortune and the number of African countries in the United Nations, the answer that people gave was very heavily influenced by whatever number the wheel of fortune ended on. And what was Kahneman's explanation? I'm going to give you a very simplified version. Kahneman's explanation was that in situations of uncertainty, situations where we don't have enough data, people will search without even realizing that they are doing so. This is something that occurs not consciously but subconsciously. People will search for something that gives them what Kahneman called an anchor point. You know, an anchor is what the ship uses to hold it steady in a place. So an anchor point gives you a reference point. And it didn't matter if the reference point of the wheel of fortune was completely wrong, it was still a reference point. So cognitive psychology is that field of psychology which helps us better understand how all of us make decisions, how decisions get made in organizations as well, and how we can make mistakes in our decisions without even realizing that we've made those mistakes. Fine. Now that I've given you an introduction to cognitive psychology, we can progress one step. And the step is that one of the ways in which people and groups of people use in order to deal with uncertainty is by what is known as psychological framing. You know, the frame of a picture or a photograph? So we have frames that we put onto all kinds of situations, and those frames help us make sense of what those situations are. And so the first slide, the second slide that I want to show you, oops, wrong one, okay, is this slide. And as you can see, we're talking about, in this case, self-framing. Okay. Self-framing. And that is to say, here we have an ordinary little cat. But if the cat believes that it is a lion, it is going to act and think and make decisions very, very differently than if it thinks it's just an ordinary little cat. So one of the things that we can immediately ask about innovation, creativity, is do we see ourselves and do we see the organizations that we work in as being timid little cats, Or do we see them as being big, brave, courageous lions? Very, very big difference. Okay. I'll give you another example of framing. If you take a look at this, what frame are you using? You see that we have really the exact same situation. But in one case, the framing is only looking at one tiny little piece of the entire picture. In the second frame, we are looking at the entire scenery and the entire complete picture of what is present. Now, in too many cases of innovation and creativity, people's tendency, can we do something? Okay. People's tendency is to focus just on the, no, what's it? Okay. If you can't hear me at the back, let me know and we'll find another solution. It's better than continuing this way. So, in too many cases of innovation and creativity, what we have is a situation where people focus only on one very, very small and limited area of innovation and creativity. Do not look at the total picture, and because they don't look at the total picture, they don't really understand what is involved in innovation and creativity. Their framing is, in a simple word, the wrong framing. Okay, so I think you now understand all about framing, and I'll give you just a couple more examples. Here we have the famous photograph. I have to tell you that this famous photograph is making my life miserable. I don't mind all of the people who come and say, can we take a selfie with you, and who want to have pictures taken. But if I tell you that on Facebook and on LinkedIn, I have thousands and thousands of people who want me to be their friends, and let's face it, I think I'm a nice person, but even a nice person isn't going to be friends with thousands and thousands of people he knows nothing about. So I have these requests coming in, even today. So why am I showing you this picture? Because it's actually a very powerful example of framing. You see, one way to look at this picture is to say, oh, it's an older, not an old, an older man holding a baby. Big deal. Who cares? But a completely different way of framing this picture is to say, here is someone who is modeling, who is being an example of consideration, of empathy, of caring, of concern about the education of his students. Oh, if you frame it that way, that's a photo that can go viral. So the last count that I was able to make, and I have to tell you that I've already given up trying to keep track, but at the last count, there was something like 500 million views of this photo. Okay, so the last every time I give this talk, at the end of the talk, somebody comes up to me and says, but you didn't tell the whole story. So let me very, very quickly tell you the whole story. The story is that about nearly a year ago now, I was giving a lecture. The topic was very similar to the topic I'm giving today. Very, very similar. And in my class, because of the nature of Israeli society and culture, there are many professors, not just me, who allow their students to bring their babies or their young children to the lecture. And the reason for that is because in Israel, students begin university at an older age, and by the time they reach their second degree, they all have families, they all are married, and yes, they have babysitting and baby care arrangements, but it doesn't always work out. Sometimes the grandparents aren't available, or the kindergarten is closed for a holiday, or the child is a little bit not well, and the parent doesn't want to leave them, so they bring them to the university. So there was this mother with her baby, and I was giving the lecture, and the baby became restless. And I could see that the mother was getting ready to take the baby and to leave the lecture. And I didn't want her to miss the lecture. And because I have 4 children of my own and 5 grandchildren, I hope all will come, I went to the mother and I said, you sit down, and I picked up the baby, and you can see the baby became very calm, and another student, without my knowing about this, these things, smartphones, took my picture without me knowing about it, without me being told, without anything. And then 9 months went by. After 9 months, on an Israeli website, somebody posted a picture of a different professor holding a baby, but it was a terrible photo. It was taken from behind, so you couldn't see the professor's face, and you couldn't really see the baby. But even so, some people started making comments, and very early on, I think it was number 7, the student who took this picture posted it and wrote, my professor also holds babies. But you see, I spoke to a professional journalist who interviewed me, and I didn't mention it, but you know, it didn't just go viral on the internet. I was contacted by the BBC and by CNN and the Washington Post and Brazilian television, and it was crazy. So I spoke to a professional journalist, and the professional journalist told me, you know, whoever the student was who took the picture didn't realize how powerful a picture they were taking. Because when you look at the photo, you can see that it's completely natural and spontaneous. It's not something that's been staged. You can see that it has to be a lecture. You can see the academic normal curve in the background. The baby is a cute baby with blue suit and stars. And of course you've got the hand like this, which is a very powerful gesture. So that started getting a lot of comments. And that reached my daughter. And my daughter posted and tagged and shared it. And now, here we have the big, big mystery. Because somebody in America, we don't know who it is, all we know is that he has a site called Joseph, million likes just on his site. And from there, it exploded around the world. So if you want to, but not now, you put into Google Sydney Engelberg, Vietnam, and you'll see all of the articles and the postings and the Facebook in Vietnamese of this picture. So that's one frame. The final framing that I'll show you is this, because this is such a famous frame. When President Obama was running for his first presidency, he wanted the American public not to frame him as an Afro-American president. He wanted the American public to frame him as the person who was going to bring a new, I'll use the word from your slogan here at this university, a new dream to America. Because that's what hope is all about. Hope is about having a dream, vision. And so we have this very graphic poster of Obama with the word hope in very big letters, and it's a completely different way of understanding and thinking about Obama as a president than otherwise would have been the case. So I hope that you now understand why it is so important that we have the correct understanding of what innovation and creativity are all about. Because if we have the wrong frame, we're simply going to be dealing with issues that are not going to lead us to success. So we can now move on to what is real innovation. And over here, I have to tell you that I'm going to be the person who has to take on the role of the bad cop. You know, in police interrogations, there's the good policeman and the bad policeman. And the good policeman is very nice and very understanding and says, would you like to have a cigarette or would you like something to drink? And the bad policeman is the policeman who shouts and says and threatens and says, if you don't do what I tell you, then I'm going to throw you in jail for the rest of your life. So over here, I have to be the bad policeman. Because when I talk about what real innovation is about, I will talk about it in terms of some of the myths and misunderstandings that there are about the nature of innovation. So, we're going to leave. And we have myth number one. Innovation is about a big idea. And you can see in the illustration, those of you who know a little teeny bit about history, that is the Greek philosopher Archimedes, and you will know that the story is, whether it's true or not is another matter, but the story is that Archimedes was in his bath, and when he lowered himself into his bath, he saw the water going up, and he said, Eureka, which in Greek is, I understand. Guess what? This still doesn't work. He had this instantaneous big idea that explained the relationship between mass and volume. But what can I tell you? Unfortunately, and I say that deliberately, unfortunately, that's not what innovation innovation and creativity is about most of the time. Most of the time, innovation and creativity can be compared, and now I'm doing my own framing for you, can be compared to searching for gold. Now, if you think that there's gold in a certain area, there are three ways that you can search for the gold. One way is for you to just walk around and hope that maybe you'll see a piece of gold lying around. Your chances aren't very high. A second way of searching for gold is to say, okay, I think the gold is going to be over here, and you start digging a hole, and you don't find gold, so you dig deeper, and you still don't find gold, and you dig some more, and you continue digging gold, and hold the hole until maybe you find some gold. But you know, if you know anything about statistics, then you know that your chances are not very high of discovering gold. A third way, thank you, a third way of searching for gold is to say, I will dig many small holes, and maybe in one of those small holes I will find gold, or in a number of those small holes I will find gold. And obviously, statistically, your chances of finding gold if you dig many small holes is going to be significantly higher than if you just walk around the area or if you dig one very deep hole. Now, innovation and creativity can be compared to that search for gold. You can walk around and just hope that you're going to have a big idea. I promise you, your chances are very, very small. You can say, no, I know where I'm going to find that one big idea, and you can continue digging and digging and digging in the hope that maybe you will come up with that one big idea. But in fact, in real life, most of innovation and creativity comes from lots of those small holes spread all over the place. And I will give you a real world example. Everybody here, everybody has heard of either Disney or of Pixar films, you know, the film company that was founded by Steven Spielberg. Now, how does Disney or Pixar come up with a hit like Frozen? You see, it doesn't matter if you're talking about the United States, or you're talking about Israel, or you're talking about Vietnam. You can't walk anywhere without seeing Frozen all over the place. And, you know, I think that parents have already reached the point where they hate Elsa and Anna more than anything else, because that's all their kids want to talk about. However, the question that interests us is, how do they come up with a movie like that? And what we know, and it's repeated over and over again, is that it's not that somebody brilliant walks into the office of the head of the studio and says, guess what? I know that if we make a movie called Frozen, we are going to make billions and billions of dollars. It doesn't happen that way. What happens in real life is that many, many people come together, and all of them have their own little ideas, like those little holes searching for gold. And one person says, you know, I think that it would be nice if we made a film based on one of the Grimm fairy stories. And another person says, you know, I think it would be nice if we made a movie that shows women as being strong and powerful. and a third person says, you know, I think it would be really nice if we made a movie that had a funny reindeer in it. And all of these ideas are unconnected. But when you put them together, you come up with innovation and creativity. So the first thing that you need to understand in how to correctly frame innovation and creativity is that it's not about a big idea, it's about integrating many small ideas. There are the few exceptions. Remember that. But in general, that's the first myth that we need to overcome.